Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Q on Q Season 2. If you've been a listener since Season 1, you probably noticed that there's been a small gap since our last episode. Well, actually, it's been a pretty large gap. At the time, I wasn't completely convinced that I was finished with Season 1, but here we are after quite a break, and it's become clear to me that it's time to kick it back again. And here we are with Season 2. I appreciate everybody who's reached out. I really do appreciate that. Let me catch you up on life for us the past few months. Well, those of you that don't know, I'm a school teacher, and we've been back in school for about a month now, and you could say that time's been certainly pretty busy. Lots to plan, guidelines to follow, procedures to adjust, all that kind of stuff. But it's all going great. Having a really good year so far. Since my last episode, summer has happened. I hope you all had a great summer break and it was time to rest and recharge for you. It seems like so long ago. My family and I went on some short trips and we had marching band camp, which is exhausting but always super rewarding. Moved our daughter back to college. Our son started high school again. And amongst all that, finding time to do some video work and read and do some planning. And most importantly, finding some time to recharge. I'm super excited about the inspiration and ideas that I've been downloading during this time off. And I'm excited to launch this new season with some new topics and what I think will be some great additions. So, I mentioned the past month or so we've been back in school. It's been kind of crazy this year, but we're plugging along. And the past few weeks at home have been interesting too. We've had a lot of discussions about decisions we make and how they affect you and who you talk to and what you say to them and kind of what the repercussions of that are. And all right, so that seemed like a lot, but we've had some specific instances and I've witnessed things within the workplace and out in public where people have said things or made decisions that affect others and they don't really talk about what effect that's had. Or maybe it's evident that they don't think about how it's going to affect people. The sad but expectable thing is, to be honest, that we tend to make a lot of decisions and say a lot of things really quickly. And often we don't think, that next step, who we're going to affect, how what we say will be taken, what consequences down the road it may have, even if it goes in different directions. And perhaps most importantly, who is watching and learning from our behavior. And I'm sure you're sitting there thinking, yeah, we hear it all the time. Our choices have consequences. Our words have power. We think before we speak. I know. It seems like the obvious, right? Well, as much as I hate to hammer this point home, it's really as simple as that. But for me, I'm starting to learn that it's something a whole lot more. So let me tell you where my thoughts are going with this. I work in a school. We have certain expectations for our students. Some of them slip up, some more than others. I'm not saying we as adults don't do the same thing, but sometimes our students will say or do things they regret, and most of the time they learn from their actions and their missteps. But despite all that, we generally want our school to have a culture where we all feel included and understood. It's not my job or anybody else's to judge where they come from or their home life, their upbringing, their choices, their demeanor. But we have standards of behavior we expect them to follow. That behavior, combined with an understanding and respect of each other, helps establish a culture in a school. So if we want that kind of behavior to be demonstrated and held by our students, shouldn't we as adults model the same thing? You think it'd be easier for us as adults to bite our tongues when there's something we really want to say, if we know it's for the better? Think carefully about what we say and how we act around our students, and most of the time how we do around each other. If we truly want our students to exhibit a culture where they show care and compassion and understanding for each other, we should really do the same thing. And should those above us demonstrate that same type of respect? What if teachers who had a genuine concern about something had a cordial conversation with somebody rather than bad-mouthing them to somebody else? What if our students, instead of spreading rumors about each other, just learned to appreciate their differences, their uniqueness, their talents, and learn to talk to each other? Now, I'm not saying this is my school or any specific school. I just use that as an example from my work as a teacher. But think about that same example if we were to apply that to the home. We expect our kids to be respectful, to work hard, to demonstrate some restraint and responsibility in their decision making. What if we want them to do that, but as their parents, we don't do that same thing? Have you ever heard the saying, do as I say, not as I do? Yeah, I know. Sorry, folks, our kids are watching us. They're learning, they're making their own decisions based on what they witness us doing. Now, I'm not saying adults aren't allowed to screw up. Trust me, I do it daily. Well, probably more often by the minute. But the fact is, if we want our kids to be the best they can, are we modeling that behavior for them in what we say, what we do, our interactions, and the choices we make? And before I go any further, I want to address any thought you might have about saying, well, they're kids, they're going to screw up, let them be kids. Or to an extent, kids will all do certain things, and we should expect that to be the case. But if we just keep playing the it's okay, they're kids game, what are we teaching them? The philosophy of being your child's best friend over being their parent is where we miss the boat. You notice I didn't say it wasn't okay to be your child's friend. For many of us, our child's biggest confidant, their biggest cheerleader, their go to person is one or both of their parents. But never should the concept of being your child's friend overstep the bounds of being their biggest role model. So, what is the way to do this and be successful? I'm sure you've been waiting to find out what that title meant of today's episode, right? Well, I hate to disappoint you by telling you I don't have all the answers or the magic cure. And I know right here we could say, well, that's the end of the episode. He can't help us. If so, I'd write a book, every parent would buy it, and I would be a multimillionaire. Well, I can only tell you what I've done. So let's start here. Have the words, because I said so, ever come out of your mouth? Yes, I can probably look back at specific instances where it has, and my child has been so frustrated because I really couldn't give them an answer. Because we use these words as a quick fix when we sometimes, don't know what to say. They ask why, and we say because I said so. And they genuinely want to know what the why is for that because. Here's the problem. Kids, even super young kids, want to know the what behind your because. Let me say that again. Kids want to know the what behind your because. And if you can't give it, you can ultimately undermine our authority as parents. Because I said so was never a satisfying answer when I was a kid, and I'm sure it wasn't for you. It's no different now that we're the parents. Trust me when I say that when it comes to guiding and teaching our kids, do as I do is way more effective than do as I say. Though it's true for the world, it's especially true that for our children, our lives are on display 24/7. They're always watching and learning from other people, and us especially, both our positives and our negatives, our characteristics and our behaviors. Intentional parents understand this reality and think about what messages their actions are sending. And listen, that's not to say that intentional parents don't mess up. We're all human. We mess up probably more than folks who aren't being intentional sometimes because you were really trying hard, sometimes too hard. Even intentional parents are imperfect, and our actions sometimes reflect that reality. But those imperfections can speak volumes in a different way. And we're not just talking about parent to child. We're talking about with any relationship. Hear me when I say this. Kids don't need us to be perfect parents. The perception that we need to be perfect or always say the perfect thing is frankly intimidating and can really create insecurity on both sides. We've been having conversations in our household for a few weeks now about maturity, good decisions, balancing facts and fiction and feelings. And sometimes I feel like I'm saying things 4, 5, 6, or 20 times, all in different ways before they sink in. And sometimes they don't sink in. But the fact is, they don't want to see us playing perfect. Whether or not they'll ever admit it, our kids want us to be real. The fact is, for people of faith, our conversations, the what I say stuff, must be validated by how we live our lives. The what I do reality. But yes, there is good news. Our kids, your kids, are picking up some awesome qualities from us. You see, it's super easy for us to focus on negative characteristics and forget about the positive things we're passing on. Let's be honest. We're all a bundle of strengths and weaknesses, and our children will see both in us. What's important is that we reflect on the messages that are being communicated by how we live our lives. Now, the reality that your kids are watching isn't meant to scare you or make you feel defeated, because I know for me, there's times when I say something or make a stupid decision and I'm like, duh, my kid just heard that or saw that, or why did you do that? And since mine are teenagers, it's a little easier sometimes to have discussions with them about it. But when you think about the most important things and messages you want to pass on to your kids, consider whether your actions in those areas of your life are the ones you want on display. As I said, our kids know parents aren't perfect. But what they may not know is what they're supposed to do when they mess up. They need you to model it. Don't be afraid to embrace hard discussions. And perhaps more importantly, don't be afraid to be honest and open in your discussions. You may not want to share stories from your past that make excellent object lessons, but sometimes it's exactly what your kid needs to hear. Before we have these conversations with our kids, or whether it's with friends, family, coworkers, or whoever, we need to make sure we're having conversations with God. Sometimes we dread what we're going to say or how we're going to approach a situation, and sometimes it seems like time drags on and all of our worries are laid out in front of us. But the issue is, we need to not be afraid to just lay them out at the feet of our Creator who can do something about them. And sometimes we need to pray, and pray a lot, and be patient. See, it's in that moment when we realize we can't operate in our own strength, when we can't find a foolproof set of rules or conversation points to follow. In that moment, something shifts. Conversations with God have the ability to fill us with the strangest sense of safety. Where we might think we're afraid of how we're going to handle a situation, we might actually find our fears get scared out of us. And it's in those moments when He whispers to us, it's going to be okay. You're a beloved child of mine, made in my image. His words wash over us. And when we pray and we seek, we'll operate in a direction He wants us to go. He'll help us say what we need to say, when we need to say it, and do what we need to do, when we need to do it. As long as we don't choose to do it our way. But even when we don't understand, or we feel like we can't have those conversations, it's important for us to know that it's okay. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a wall when I'm talking to teenagers, whether it's at school or having conversations with my kids, but yet I'm going to keep having those conversations. Why? Because I have to trust and have the faith that even if I was talking and they were just listening but not really hearing me, that I've planted a seed, and that my will to knock back down will pay dividends in the end. Whether it takes, like I said before, 4, 5, 6, 20, 100 times, that everything will be okay. So now that I've said all that, I know I haven't answered any questions, and I haven't given you that magic cure, and I may not have even given a whole lot of practical advice. I've just been real. If there's one thing you can take away from today, I hope it's this. Know that God is always with you. No matter what battle you're facing, what conversation you have to have, what decisions you're trying to make, that God is right there. And when you earnestly seek His guidance, He's going to give you the strength, the words, the actions that you need. Listen to this reminder from Psalm 40, and I'm going to start in verse 1. This is the Amplified Version. I waited patiently and expectantly for the Lord, and He inclined to me and heard my cry. Continuing at the end of verse 2, He set my feet upon a rock, steadying my footsteps and establishing my path. In verse 3 begins with these words, He put a new song in my mouth. Whatever conversations, whatever discussions, whatever interactions you're experiencing, they might throw a few curveballs to you at times. But remember, God is working out His good and perfect will on every believer. And I pray that you'll let Him do just that, whether it's in hard interactions with friends or coworkers, or conversations that you're having with your kids. It might seem frustrating sometimes, but I promise you this. We need to take time to enjoy the ride and take every opportunity to pray and grow in Him and allow Him to be with us in every situation. And that is the way. I'm excited to be back with you for Season 2. Thanks again for listening. See you back here next time, and we'll have more for you on cue.